She had no name in that village, not really. They called her the Silent Girl, the one who lived with her ailing mother and her 7-year-old brother. Arav, in a crumbling house at the edge of town where the road turned to mud and the electricity flickered like a dying star. Mira was 17, and she had spent her entire life being invisible. Invisible at school, invisible at the market, invisible at the community gatherings, where people laughed loudly and dreamed, openly, and never once thought to include a girl like her. But invisibility, as Mira had learned, is not the same as emptiness. Inside her quiet chest lived something vast and untamed, something she had never been given the chance to show the world. That was about to change. Not because the world had become kinder, but because her brother's life had run out of time. Arav had been diagnosed with a rare blood condition 3 months ago, and the surgery he needed cost more money than their family could earn in 2 years. Their mother had already sold her gold bangles. Their neighbors had contributed what little they could, and still the gap was enormous. 60,000 rupees short, and the hospital had given them a deadline of 2 weeks. It was Mira's school friend, Priya, who whispered the idea one afternoon beneath a mango tree. A city-wide music competition with a first prize of 1 lakh rupees, open to all ages, to be held in just 4 days. Mira went home that evening and pulled out something from beneath. A loose floorboard in their room. A violin, old and dusty, that had belonged to her late father. No one in the village even knew she could play. She had taught herself in secret over 6 years, practicing in the early hours of the morning before anyone woke, letting the music fill the corners of their small house while the world outside still slept. She registered for the competition the very next morning, and by afternoon, the news had spread through school like fire through dry grass. The laughter started immediately. Mira wants to play violin? One boy snorted in the corridor. She can't even speak properly in class. A group of older students gathered around her at lunch and performed mock bowing gestures, clutching imaginary instruments, doubling over with laughter. Even a teacher, a man who should have known better, smiled when he heard and said, "Well, it's good that she's dreaming." The competition was held at the city's Grand Cultural Hall, a place Mira had never entered before. She wore her mother's clean dupatta over her school uniform and carried the old violin in a cloth bag stitched together from a bedsheet. Around her were contestants in formal attire, carrying gleaming instruments in professional cases, trained students from academies, children of musicians, teenagers who had been performing on stages since they were 5. When her name was called and she walked to the center of that vast, brightly lit stage, she heard it. The murmur rippling through the audience, the barely concealed amusement at the sight of this plain girl with her wrapped-up violin and her second-hand clothes. Someone near the back actually laughed out loud. The judges leaned back with polite, unconvinced expressions. Mira stood at the microphone, and for a moment, the entire hall held its breath. In the way crowds do when they are waiting to witness failure. She did not speak. She raised her bow, and then the first note came. It was not just a sound, it was a reckoning. It poured out of that old violin like something that had been caged for years, and was only now, finally, allowed to run free. It was grief and love and desperation and beauty all woven together into a single, soaring melody that rose to the rafters of the hall and seemed to press against the walls. The laughing stopped. The murmuring stopped. Every single person in that hall became perfectly still, the way people only become when something true is happening in front of them and they know, somewhere deep in their chest, that they are witnessing something they will remember for the rest of their lives. Mira played for 6 minutes. She played her father's memory, her mother's sacrifice, her brother's small laughing face. Every cold morning she had practiced alone. Every moment she had been laughed at and looked past and dismissed. When the final note faded into silence, there was a pause, the kind that only comes after something extraordinary, and then the entire hall erupted. People rose to their feet before the judges had even reached for their scorecards. Mira stood on that stage with tears streaming silently down her face, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming force of finally being seen. She won. First place, 1 lakh rupees, and a standing ovation that lasted nearly 4 minutes. Arav had his surgery 11 days later. He recovered fully. And Mira, the girl they had called Silent, never needed to prove herself to the world again, because on that one evening, she had reminded everyone in that hall of something essential and true, that the ones the world laughs at the loudest are often the ones carrying the deepest music inside them, waiting only for the moment to let it out. If this story moved your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner Stories, because every soul deserves to be heard, and every story of quiet courage deserves to be told.